welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. So happy to welcome John Schmid, and he is one of the authors with JPV Press and also a musician. Good morning.
Good morning.
We have all kinds of things to talk about today. First of all, something big happening tonight. Let's start there. What's happening, John?
Tonight, I have what is called a CD release party. About a year and a half ago, let me back up. There is a barn in Holmes County.
There is?
Called the Legends.
Only one?
This one's called the Legends Barn.
Okay.
One of the most unique buildings, I think, in Holmes County because Rusty Baker, the owner, is a world-renowned artist. He does murals in towns, but he's also, he painted, if he's an artist, you say he painted. Anyway, he has on his barn the country music legends. On one side, they're rock legends. On the other side, just a whole bunch. I sent a picture of this because there's Johnny Cash on the barn, Dolly Parton, Elvis Presley, Hank Williams, Loretta Lynn. I sent a picture of that down to the Cash cabin. Chuck Turner, the engineer there, is a friend. And he texted back, "Yeah, you ought to bring us up there and do a recording." And I just laughed. I mean, I didn't even say LOL. I don't know how I laughed, but he knew I didn't take him serious.
Yes.
He texted back, "I'm serious, John." I said, "Dude,
So
if you're
you
serious,
did.
come on up." And that was in May. And then in December, finally, 5 of the sidemen in Nashville got their schedules right, came up to Holmes County and did a recording in that 150-year-old barn. And that was in December. And it just was released. I mean, I got them about a month ago. And so they're on sale already. But we're going to have a release party in that very barn tonight.
So you come to the barn. Come
to
see the Legends Barn.
It's near Killbuck, Ohio, and if you Google the Legends Barn, you'll get the address.
Brings you to the right place.
Yeah.
I think you'd also type that in Waze or in your GPS. The Legends Barn, Killbuck, Ohio.
I think it's near Killbuck, but I think the address is Millersburg.
Okay.
But I
it'll take
just
you right
Googled
there.
it to make
Perfect.
sure. You can Google the Legends Barn; it comes up.
How are the acoustics? Was this barn made for a recording?
Maybe for cows.
Okay.
But they brought their own equipment. They brought, top-notch stuff up there and basically set up a recording studio right there in the barn floor.
It's so cool. Well, I love anything that's taking place in a barn right at Christmas time anyway. It just makes us remember what this is all about.
All right, yes.
So tell us about the music. Was this new music, stuff that you have just written?
No,
Is it you're covering things?
I wrote one of the songs. I'm not much of a songwriter, but there's several Johnny Cash songs. There's several songs by David Patilla, who wrote a song called "The Old Crowd," "The Old Man," "Make Me a Promise," and then I did one Hank Williams song called "Lost Highway." It's generally a Christian CD, but I threw in what did I put in? Pickin' Time.
So a little country, a little
it's a sort of a mixture.
CD. Very, very cool. And what time tonight will this all be taking
6:30.
place? Be there at 6:30.
And all are welcome. It's I'm not sure how many the barn can hold, but we'll make room for everybody.
We'll pack it out.
Yeah.
How fun. Will there be listening? We'll be able to listen to some of the music? What happens at a CD release party?
Well, I'll tell you what. This is my first one ever. I've got 20-some CDs. I've never had a release party.
Really?
I just say, I go to the bookstore, "Would you please sell these?" This one, I like it. It's a big deal. I mean, the Nashville guys are on it.
Yeah.
And the barn is unique. And in fact, we were going to have 3 of the guys there, 3 of the musicians, because we're going to do a program. Well, we did a program, what day is this, Monday? This weekend. 3 of them came, and we went to a church. We went to the Amish Country Theater on Saturday.
Oh, sure.
And we went to prison yesterday at Marysville Correctional. They'd never been in a prison before.
Wow.
And so tonight, I thought they'd all be here, but 2 of them have to get back home.
Well, that is pretty exciting. Now, if you can't make it to the party tonight, but you still would love to get your hands on one of these CDs, where do we find them?
The Gospel Bookstore in Berlin or Faithview Books near Mount Hope.
Perfect. Okay.
Or
well, that makes sense. Yeah. Where the JPV Press sell lots of their books. Speaking of prison, you have a book out. It's called Showing Up. And I love the subtitle. I was in prison and you visited me. We all know that's when Jesus is separating the sheep from the goats. Maybe one of the scariest verses to read. You want to not be on the wrong side of eternity when that day happens. Tell us a little bit about Showing Up and what was behind this book.
Well, basically, this is it's not a continuous story. Each chapter is its own story, just of incidences in the ministry. Not all prison stuff, but mostly, because I'm part of a singing and prison ministry. And our goal is to hit every prison in Ohio within a year, which we've never done yet, because we always work through the chaplains, and certain chaplains like us better than others, and certain ones already have their the people they like to come in. And when the chaplains change, sometimes I have to start all over.
What drew you to prison ministry in the first place?
Well, I'm not sure. I always tell people that some folks say I'm well suited for prison ministry because I sound a little bit like Johnny Cash and I look like a convict.
I don't agree with that.
I fit right in there.
But, you do, and I do not mean for this to sound glib at all, and there is absolutely no pun intended here, but you have a captive audience. There's a group of people that I think when entertainment comes, that's not their worst day, and that's not the worst part of their day. So you are bringing some kind of hope and joy to people who desperately need it.
I think so. And the thing is, I've said this for a long time, and I always change the percentage, but 95% of ministry is showing up.
Yeah.
And even more so in a prison. And if something good happens, that's icing on the cake. Mm-hmm. But I remember, I've been doing this since 1990, almost 30 years, and I do remember the second and third time I went to certain prisons, their eyebrows went up. You came back.
Really?
And I'm not sure if some people come and never come up again or show up again, but
really?
There's something about the consistency of going. And I only go at the most 3 times a year to any prison. Mm-hmm. It's not a weekly Bible study. It's not a discipleship. It's what used to call in the system a special program.
Because you're going to so many. You're trying to reach all of the prisons in Ohio.
And special meaning if a Christian inmate can say, hey, there's something special going on at the chapel, come with me.
Right. What's the response? It seems like these days they have to give equal time to every possible flavor of religious affiliation. Mm-hmm. How are Christians welcomed into prison these days?
Well, every prison's different, but most of them you have to sign up. And if you are a Christian, you can only sign up for Christian Chapel. If you're a Muslim or some other religion, you can only go to that. Other prisons, anybody can show up.
Okay.
And, I haven't kept up. I haven't paid attention. I think it's still pretty much Christians go to Christian Chapel. In fact, some prisons, Catholics go to Catholic and Protestants go to Protestant. Mm-hmm. But they do have to give equal time to anybody who says they're a religion.
So you say that there's a lot of relationship building as far as when there's a new chaplain, you have to start all over again.
In a way, yeah.
That keeps you pretty busy.
Yeah. I mean, some prisons I haven't been to for 5 years because the chaplain changed. He had his own people he liked, and I wasn't very aggressive. And so it's partly my fault if I keep calling. I never call people, can I come sing, except prisons. I mean, the other way, all the other stuff is relatively busy. I get contacted, but I am the one who contacts prisons. Can we come in? We offer this. This is what we do. We have Bible studies, correspondence courses, and that kind of thing.
So is the book about your experiences in prison ministry?
Yes. And let me be honest, I did not write a book.
Oh, okay.
I wrote a newsletter every month for 30 years, and this is a collection of the good stories.
And this became
And now
a
that
book.
we put them all together, so I told the publisher, I said, some of the stories aren't that exciting. They put them in anyway, month after month of our ministry.
So these were the newsletters as you were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of almost like a diary?
In a sense, yeah, but each month is a story. And I used to, when I first started out, we went here, we did this, and here's what happened. And then we went here and we did this, and everyone seemed the same. So I just started telling stories of what happened. Mm-hmm. I met this guy, and he said this, and
that's great. We love stories around here, so I especially love to hear life-changing types of stories, and I think you probably are a wealth of them. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the people with whom you've interacted, and some of the changes you've gotten to see in a person's life, particularly when you go back and surprise them with a return visit? Mm-hmm. Who would you like us to know about?
It's almost like I know a lot of songs, And a lot of times I'm at a place where somebody knows John's here, lead us in a song, and I can't think of one.
Did I just hit you with that?
Yeah, but I can look at my own book
That's
here.
That's right.
And here's a story that I have a hard time telling because I get emotional. But
that's fine. We've got Kleenex, and we're totally good about getting emotional around here.
But this was I went with the Bill Glass weekend. Bill Glass used to play for the Browns.
Yes.
And when he retired, he went into prison ministry. I think he might be one of the oldest prison ministries in Ohio. He's not the oldest, but he brings in athletes and razzle dazzle, and he doesn't go to chapel. He goes to the whole prison. I only go to chapels. So when he goes, you meet the whole yard.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I go to chapel, they're there. They're on your side. They know you. So he kind of invades. But when you bring in guys with Super Bowl rings and boxers, and he's had guys parachute into prison.
That opens doors.
And,
yes.
So anyway, I was there, and one of the female volunteers was in a prison. To see if I can encapsulate this but her name was Brenda, and she's trying to talk to one of the inmates who's very bitter, wouldn't hardly look up, and so to try to break the ice, do you have children? Yeah, I got children. I don't even know where they're at. And they're in foster care somewhere. Well, Brenda said, I used to keep foster children. Yeah, well, that's where they're at. And so she said, did you ever keep, and I'm making up these names.
Sure,
did you ever keep Mark and Linda and Desiree? She said, well, yeah, I did. I had people like that. There's a picture of them on my refrigerator. And could I see it? Well, the next day she went in again, and she had kept her children. And she started crying, my children, where are they at now? She didn't even know where they were.
Oh, my goodness. And she actually got to meet the foster parent.
Yeah. And they've kept a relationship.
Children.
This is 20 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was singing out in Indiana here last summer, and that Brenda said, remember me? She was that volunteer. I said, yeah, whatever happened? And I guess she kept up with that lady for quite a while.
And so she was able to keep up with her own children?
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of divine encounters like that have happened over the years.
Oh, my goodness. Honestly, John, when you tell a story like that, who but God could make something like that happen? That is no coincidence. That's an only God kind of moment.
Yeah. So she was so angry and defeated.
But isn't it interesting how the thought of possibly meeting the person who was raising her own children, how that suddenly her heart softened immediately.
No, I don't think the children were with her at that time anymore, but she had kept them.
But she had kept them.
Yeah.
And suddenly this mother
was able to help the mother recontact her children.
And soften her heart towards them. When at first, do you find so many of people that are incarcerated have had to build up some kind of a crusty shell on the outside, and you know that there's a soft heart somewhere inside there? Do you experience that?
Yeah. In fact, I say this quite often. If I ask an inmate, tell me your story, 80% will say, I was raised by my grandmother. I was raised by my aunt. I was raised by, you can fill in the blank, anybody but mom and dad.
Yes.
Maybe my single mother. 80% of the men in prison didn't have a dad. He either left them or never was around, or he was alcoholic or abusive. In fact, I always said, if you want to know the statistics about prison, just say 80%. Because 80% are there because of drugs and alcohol. 80% will maybe not 80, but a whole bunch will come back, and even though that's not totally accurate, it tells you that things aren't good.
Well, isn't it so? I'm just going to make a comment here, and then I'd love to hear your response, that these men in prison were raised by not having a male role model in their lives, not having a dad in their lives, and yet as adults, they're not in someone's life. They're in prison.
They're in prison.
Your response to that?
Chuck Colson said, if you want to meet the next generation of prisoners, just go to those prisons and ask where are your children.
Oh, my goodness.
Those will be the next generation of prisoners.
Is that what we're finding? That because it just seems to be almost generational?
I'm not sure that's a scientific study, but Chuck Colson probably knew as much about prisons as anybody.
Yeah, and did as much for prison ministry as anyone.
Yeah.
Well, a slight glance at the clock tells me we do need to take a short break here. We'll be back after these words. We're speaking with John Schmid. He is the author of Showing Up and having a CD release party tonight. We'll be back after this. You're listening to Our Community.